Excellent. So we'll get started here. This is our community feedback session, Podio past, present, and future. I see we got some chats starting to come in on top three. Please do continue with the chat. We've unmuted a few people, so you might see yourself unmuted. Feel free to add in. Anybody else that would like to jump into the conversation, just drop something in the chat. Say, hey, unmute me, and we'll get you available to talk. So so far we got Camille, wonderful response there. We're going to address your feedback in just a second. We've unmuted Seth, Andrew, Jordan, Kimberly, Matthew, Palabi. If you guys want to jump into the conversation, feel free at any time to do so. I think there's a raise hand feature available for some attendees. We haven't used that before, but if you want to try it out, try that. If you don't see any action on that, just let us know. It looks like a little blue hand pops up in the attendees there, Dominique. Okay, excellent. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So I have a top three that I'll share. Camille, a wonderful entry there about how to do it, especially some top-level requests. And again, please feel free to jump in the chat. So Camille, we'll start with you. Palabi asked, please post the top three feature requests from you and your clients. Camille, tell us a little bit about what you posted there.
Great. You guys hear me?
We sure can.
All right, perfect. Well, yeah, the first 2 points are about the access levels to Podio. And I also mentioned this yesterday, but yeah, it's about like being able to share either access on an app level or a view inside of Podio. That is kind of a limitation that we come across quite often, especially in regards to the systems that we're building for our clients. But yeah, we oftentimes have to just work around that in different ways. And now I know there is the Procful mini app feature, which kind of works around this, but it would be great to actually keep some of those users directly in Podio, because it's not always the case that we can externalize these things.
That's a highly sought after request. I think that definitely always hits a top three, top five list for sure. As you correctly pointed out, there's ways to work around it, but it does, ultimately it's just more cost to the client or more cost to an internal budget to be able to get something that, at this point we feel would be appropriate to have inside the product. Was that 1 and 2 together, you think, Camille?
Yeah, okay. There was 1 and 2. They're kind of interlinked, I guess, with the view and app.
Very similar setup. Okay, let's talk about the next one that you got there, number 3.
Yeah, so in the number 3, I mentioned the option to run if-else statements on Globalflow actions. So as you guys know, we have the option to run if statements, and here we're talking only about Globalflow, not including Procful and ProcScript. But just on the Globalflow side, we have the option to run if statements. But oftentimes when we want to run a lot of these if statements in a row, we kind of have to run the opposite if statements to kind of have this else check. And it's not really an option to set up something that is somewhere around the lines of if else, if you follow what I mean here. Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's just additional, what feels like from a development standpoint, unnecessary complication for, if else statements have been around for a long time. So it's not, you're not asking for anything crazy. So yeah, that's something that we run into, especially when we do Globalflow builds. Depending on the client's budget, we either take them to Globalflow or C#. But yeah, we run into the same issue, and you have to come out with these long Globalflows to get around it.
Exactly. And you kind of just do the same logic, just the opposite way to kind of get these checks right. Yeah.
It's just I can't imagine that's resource efficient as well either to run all this extra code, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Okay, you got a bonus option 4 in there. And 5. So let's go over those 2 real quick, and then we're getting some more chats in. So I want to give some more time. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, sure. So number 4 is about the previous revision that you can get, and most of these are Globalflow related. But and of course you can do this in Procful. But in Globalflow, we have the option to get previous revision, but this previous revision is of the whole item. So the issues that we run into here when we have longer Globalflows is that if you want to get the previous revision of a specific field, you kind of have to get the previous revision of the whole item multiple times during the flow, and then kind of save those in custom variables there in the flow. Because we don't really have the option to target a specific field. And this field might have been changed, let's say a week ago or something, but that information is still kind of something we need in the flow. So we don't have the option to just get the previous revision of a specific field. Unless we kind of do a lot of workarounds here as well, maybe store them in Procfoo global variables and stuff like that. And this is something very useful and would really kind of cut down a lot of computation, I guess, as well. If we were just able to say, okay, give me this field, possibly in a JSON as well with like a field revision, user information or something like that.
I agree. Number 5, this one's pretty self-explanatory. Prioritize flow execution. That's around race conditions, I believe. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So I guess right now Globalflow does it the way that the oldest flow is going to run first if they have the same trigger. So also we've been in this situation where we just basically need to recreate the flows again in order to try to prioritize how they execute and how they trigger.
So that's interesting. That's something I think that a little nugget of gold there. You said that you figured out that it runs the oldest one, meaning oldest as in first one created.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I did not know that. Okay,
and that is so basically it will trigger the oldest flow first and check for the filters, and then once it's checked for those filters, it's going to trigger the next oldest one and then check for those filters. So you can imagine if you have an app with, say, 50 flows triggering on item update, it's going to, even though only one of them is actually going to have positive filters, it's going to go through basically all of those. But that one positive flow, if it is number 50 in line, then it, of course, have to wait until those 49 other flows have finished triggering. And you can't really prioritize this.
And those flows may fail, all 40 items just fail to filter, not even run, but you got to wait for that execution. 1 or 2, you're probably not going to notice, but you're right. If there's a complicated set of automations, or especially if you get into like core space, like a CRM or production space that has a lot of stuff attached to it, it can really degrade performance.
Exactly. So we've kind of had some workarounds here with some manual flows triggering and triggering some Procfoo scripts as well. But just having an option to prioritize that within Globalflow, maybe just having like a small drop down saying, okay, this is priority 1, 2, 3, 4, and then going down the line. I don't know if that would be possible, but it would definitely make things easier.
That's fair. Okay, very good. Camille, thank you so much for your contribution. I think some of these we'll bring up also for Jordan in the next panel.
Can I have a question over there?
Yes, please.
Before we move on to the next feedback.
Yes, please.
Thanks, Camille, for all the feedbacks. I specifically have a question for the first 2, and I feel, Gil, you also mentioned that this is a very common feedback that comes often, right? The app level access, right? So just wondering, like the overall concept of having a workspace and apps within the workspace was that we have a set of team members who are invited to that workspace and who will have access to all the data across that workspace. And if you really need to share a particular item or something outside your team, like an external member to your company or external member to your team who is still an employee, you can do that by sharing one single item, right? So, but I'm also seeing this request come up more often these days that share a app and not a workspace, right? So aren't we negating the overall concept that we had earlier with Podio with this of the workspace, like the team being together on one workspace and transparency built in that workspace?
I'll take what I'll do is I'll kind of speak my mind a little, or my opinion for everyone, please, if there's other things, please raise your hand, enter in the chat, those kinds of things. But from our perspective, a lot of the item sharing capabilities, single item sharing capabilities doesn't, the use cases that we need app level sharing, it doesn't cut it, right? Because you might have, I'll just make up a quick example, like a CRM system, and then you have an assistant. Well, that assistant may only, you may only want that assistant to get into, let's say, leads, but not actually get into like client profiles or, current orders. So all those things may be in one single workspace, but you need an assistant that can get to only one of those apps. Now, item sharing does help with some of that, but if you have several thousand leads in there that assistant needs to get into, item sharing is out of the question just because of the way that it organizes. That's a lot of times what we run into a use case. And I know that's a huge use case. I think somebody said there, Andrew, that shared with me, doesn't allow for filtering, searching, sorting. I mean, there's just a lot of barriers that. Now, we use single item sharing frequently, and there are many appropriate use cases for that. But a lot of times what we find, it's not the client's external, our clients that need item level access. It's a lot of internal use case. So what we've done is we issue a workspace to each individual person and then have to tie it back to a master workspace. Then we can give app level that's how we give app level permissions now. But that requires us replicating the data and the automations on Citrix, which that's more workload. Anybody want to add to that? Okay, very good. So
you covered it well.
That's why I think that's one of the main reasons why is that they just need access to thousands of items that's typically in a single app, but we don't want to give them the whole workspace.
I have an add-on to that use case.
Please.
Yeah, so we're working with quite a few PPE companies currently. And so just the use case being someone, let's say a supplier supplying their products, and they can upload what their products are, but then you have the use cases of accessibility and editability from an external user. So let's say I upload product 321. If I start adding them to all of those items, or the alternative, I have a workspace and then it has to scale to each of those end clients, then the fields that they're editing and what they're giving access to, that's why I think we all lean on Procfoo and portals so that they can actually have update edits. So for me, the biggest use case of shareability is actually catering to what you want an external user to edit. And at the item level, they have access to all of the administrative buttons that we have and updates. And so you can't really build for the backend administration and then also invite external members without repositioning it outside of the workspace. So that's really the use case I'm trying to solve often, is positioning something to the end external user where they can access what the information they've given, because you kind of have the black box. Podios are black box to the outside. And how do they then access that information and update it? So Procfoo does a great job of that, but it's something that Podio doesn't seem to solve easily.
That's wonderful feedback. I mean, that's very, again, similar use case to it that we run into as well. I guess a lot of that would be solved with item sharing, but it tends to be the volume of items that.
Yeah, and just maybe as a double down negative comment that was in the chat from someone else as well as you, which is it's just not practical from a user interface either, the way in which in the left-hand columns, even when Podio shares things with us, it's on a per item basis on the left hand, and there's no coherent sense of how that external user could then be a quote unquote Podio participant. It's really kind of not a user behavior that makes sense to say a multi-million-dollar supplier that's given our clients their product information and needs to access it. So
Pallavi, I guess does that help answer?
Yep, that does help answer. And so one additional question of there is the complete app sharing gonna matter more, or if you are able to share a view within the app, or like one filter list of items within the app? Is that a better use case?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think, Camille, you touched on that on your second point, which was share a particular view. We find the view might be actually more useful. I know that that may be more limiting, but at least in a short run, that would probably be more useful for us.
Yeah, so if I can just add to that, because yeah, I do agree with what Andrew said. It's more about the let's say the user experience when we're sharing items with them. Because if we share items, we just get them as like a list of items which we can then click through. The most valuable thing here is, and this is regardless if we share an app or a view, but just have that same interactivity with these items that we have on an app level when we are an admin. So basically all the filtering options, the sorting options, just having the options of different layouts, like in the table, cards, whatever, because this kind of gives us an overview where I guess our use case here, the specific one I'm referring to is for one of our clients, a painting company who has around 50 projects, 50 houses to paint a month. And then they split these houses on different contractors. So of course, these contractors we don't want to give access to other contractors' projects. So we kind of have to split this up. And the way that we technically would have to do it in Podio right now would to be to share specific individual items with each of these contractors. And 50 projects over time gets quite a lot, and then nobody has an overview of the houses they've done and what they've done on those houses. So sharing a view, for example, saying this contractor is responsible for these houses, then gives them that whole overview of all their individual projects.
Excellent stuff. I know we're starting to run.
It should be in an app, but as long as we have that. Sorry?
I say this is great. I apologize to cut off. We're starting to run thin on time. I know we're going to move into a roundtable session, so I feel that we'll probably just be able to carry these conversations over into that roundtable. Jordan, you will be moderating that, so I will let you make the ultimate decision there. But I do want to pick something else out that's popped up into chat. Let's see. Just to give Seth, is there out of your three, which one do you like the most there?
Out of my three, no, I'm not going to select one. I want all three done.
Okay, well, you got 2 minutes.
Yeah. So sorry, real quick. Those three items I listed out in the partner development out in Copenhagen, and a year later they're not done. But these are. And please heed my words here. They quite literally will improve Podio's operations and functionalities in the system and across the platform by a good third, 30%. Those three options right there are the biggest slowdowns, the biggest issues, and they have to be resolved. It's going to improve the partner community. It's going to improve development. It's actually going to allow us to revamp and reformat customer systems, which actually leads to more billable hours for customers. And that is literally writing those out. It's the item ID, making that available as similar to the created on and created by fields inside of the app, ensuring that they're also available inside of the Podio, inside of the Podio calculation fields. The end date, starting to actually get that end date available within the Podio calc field, and then creating a section header field type. That's also critical. If I were to add a fourth, has to be done, absolutely has to be done, is improve the filtering to show items that are not set. So instead of showing just only set or a null or not set, but showing items that if not set, if only this value is selected, the opposite. And then the very, very final one is making the tag type that is available in the contact app type for the company or the organization. That's a tag field. That's also a part of the text field. Merging those two fields into the text field. So you'll have a text single line, text multi-line, and text tag field. That would allow us to hugely improve category fields and improve filtering that way, because right now we have a script that we use to actually put in those tag fields there. But those are probably my top 5 that absolutely have to be looked at and viewed and done this next year, or else we will continue to face nonstop issues with Podio.